You cannot actually beat the addiction, but here's what you can do. If you want to beat the addiction like in video games, defeating an enemy by making it no longer exist, then you'll be disappointed. Because you cannot actually make the addiction disappear. The addiction will be still there. But the only difference between a person who is no longer addicted to pornography and a person who is still is that the person who is no longer addicted has two things. First, they know themselves better than the person who is addicted. And second, which is they have better control of themselves. So, in order to know yourself better, you need to know the right words in order to describe what is happening to you. And in today's video, I'll tell you more about the process of recovery and give you the words in order to help you to navigate through it. So let's start by the word recovery itself, which is a healing process of returning to the original healthy state. Three things. First, you are healing, which means that you are learning alternatives, more healthier ways of dealing with the pain, dealing with the discomfort that your life brings to, and using other ways than a pornography in order to numb yourself or pretty much put the problem under the rug. Second, it's the process. It's a process which means that it takes time. You haven't developed addiction overnight, so you also won't remove it overnight. This requires patience. And the third thing is that it's a returning to the original healthy state. This means you weren't born with the addiction, so you know it is possible to live without it. And during recovery, the goal is to take you back there to a life where you no longer need to use a pornography as a solution to your problems. That's recovery. During and after your recovery, you will experience the impulses and feelings of wanting to watch pornography, which are caused by trigger. Trigger is the thing that gives you the impulses to watch porn. You can think of it as a button. Every time you watch something on social media, a person who is, for example, uncovering certain parts of their body, then pretty much a button gets pressed and you get that you get that impulse to watch porn. That's trigger. The impulses itself, they are called urges or cravings. They are pretty much the same thing. They are that impulse that drives you towards doing something or getting something. It's pretty much that motivation towards a behavior. So at the beginning, you see a person who is uncovering certain parts of their body on social media. So you get triggered, right? The button gets pressed. When the button gets pressed, you start to get that impulse of watching porn, which is called the craving. And then comes the action itself, which consists of three parts. First, you are watching the pornography. Second, you are masturbating over it. And third, you reach an orgasm. This is called PMO. These PMOs happen often. And even during the process of recovery, you cannot, or it is very difficult to pretty much go cold turkey and never ever had one. Even though that's the base, even though it's the best case scenario where you have no PMOs, therefore the process of recovering and returning your brain to the original healthy state is the fastest. It is very difficult. This is because the more you are not giving in into your urges, over time they build up. They're becoming stronger and stronger, which makes the fallback much harder to resist. Luckily, this doesn't last forever. Over time, the brain learns that it is pointless to try to force you into watching more pornography, so over time it reduces the impulses. But you will experience them a lot, so That's what you can expect. Assuming that you have done a PMO, you have watched the porn, masturbated over it, and reached an orgasm, then based on the amount of times you have done that, three things can happen. First, you can either have a lapse. Second, you can either have a relapse. Or third, you can recidivate. What they mean? Simply put, lapse means that you have only watched it once or twice, but eventually you got back to the process of recovery of no longer watching pornography. Relapse means that it is continuing to happening, so three, four, five times and more. And when you recidivate, which is a medical term, it pretty much means that you have gone back to the original state from which you have started the recovery. This process can be, or this state is pretty much where you have experienced the symptoms, or pretty much the signs, the things that are telling you that something is happening. For example, depressions, problems with focus, energy fluctuation, or for example, erectile dysfunction. That's few of the symptoms that can happen when you consume too much pornography and you have developed the addiction. So once again, having a PMO during the process of recovery, it's common and it's fine. The goal, though, is to make them as few as possible. The less PMOs you do, the faster the process of recovering and returning back to the original healthy state, the better. So every time you experience the PMO, at the end there is something called a remorse, which is a deeply negative emotional state of acknowledging that you have caused something harm or that you have gone against your moral compass. Simply way to put it, it's after you have reached an orgasm, usually comes the feelings of guilt, the shame, and pretty much that feeling that makes you even more motivated to watch further pornography. So this is something that you can pretty much experience in the later parts of the addiction, where at the beginning these feelings might not come. But the more you are consuming pornography, the more frequently they happen and the stronger they become. So this is called remorse, which is that feeling of shame or guilt that happens right after you have consumed pornography. Let's just say now that you haven't watched a porn for a few days. What can happen is that you can experience the strong urges, much stronger urges than at the beginning, which are called withdrawals. They are pretty much signals from your body and the mind. They are telling you that the drug is no longer there. You can think of it as your body trying to ask you, where is the good stuff? And this can be signaled to you in, for example, that, for example, you tend to sweat. Maybe you can shake a bit, like if you have a cold, or you can, for example, have a flat line. So these words are pretty much telling you or describing you the whole process. At the beginning, there is a trigger. That's that button that creates an urge. The urge is the motivation that drives you towards wanting to consume pornography. The consumption part consists of three things, which is PMO, watching porn, masturbating, and getting an orgasm. And at the end of it, you get a remorse, which is the feeling of guilt and shame. The longer you manage to not consume pornography and the longer the PMOs are from each other, then you can experience withdrawals, which are pretty much the urges or the cravings that are pretty much intensified. These over time get removed and you get back to the original healthy state. If you, though, during the process of recovery manage to reach or have a PMO, then based on the amount of times you are doing it, then you can describe it either as a lapse, which means you have once or twice have watched pornography, relapse, which is that you have done it repetitively, or that you have recidiviate, which means that you have pretty much gone back to the state from which you have started the addiction. Your recovery pretty much depends on how you choose to solve your problems. For example, let's just say there is a problem in your life, for example, lack of focus. You have only two options. You can either fix it and try to go to a healthier alternative state, which is pretty much the recovery itself, or you can choose to go to pornography, consume it, and keep the addiction in your life. The way the addiction was built was that there was this problem, which over time got solved by consuming more and more pornography. Every time you consume it, it pretty much gave it a +1 point of rating that this is my top solution to this problem. Over time, these points added up and eventually became an addiction itself. So, the process of recovery is that you are figuring out and choosing a healthier alternative ways and trying to solve that problem using that other way. Over time, the more you vote for the healthier alternative state, you are pretty much putting the points back to the original state. And sooner or later, these points will add up, eventually telling your body and the mind that this is the top solution you are choosing for this problem. This is pretty much same principle as with workout. Let's just say that you are working out for 2 years and you have a strong visible six pack. If on the next day you eat, for example, 3 pizzas, you will still have the abs. The progress is not erased. You have to do it over and over and over again, eating too much calories, which over time builds the fat, and then the progress will get erased. But if you have managed to have a single day, 2 or 3 days, then having a lapse is not a catastrophe. The progress is still there. It's a matter of trying to prove to yourself over and over that this is the top one solution. A question you might be asking is whether you even have the addiction or not, because you see some people watching pornography and pretty much saying that they're fine, but somehow you are addicted to it. So the addiction is not the first stage of it. There are other stages where, for example, before the addiction, there was a habit. In order to know whether you have the addiction or not, in this video, I gave you words which you can use to better describe your process of recovery in order to better navigate through it. You might be asking though if you even have the addiction, because there are some people who are watching pornography, masturbating, and reaching orgasm over it, yet still they can't control themselves. There is a way how you can tell whether you even have the addiction or if it's just a habit. This is a topic that I will discuss in the next video, which is how to know whether you have a pornography addiction.